because writing is a window into the mind of a reader. And this is where you're going to see some of this come out, and then I'm going to extend it and show you some tricks that are super high. We're going to look at some kid writing to see what's happening when they're pulling things together from whole cloth. But I'm going to take it from the very bottom ground zero and shift your paradigm completely about what we think kids can do and when they can do it. Now, I call this parallel universe writing because there's some weird stuff where, like, there'll still be an elephant in this parallel universe, but it'll be pink. And it'll have maybe 2 trunks instead of 1. So I know that sounds like a strange analogy, but the reason I say that is you'll be able to see some telltale signs that this is kindergarten writing, even though it's going to look ridiculous for kindergarten writing. Now, this is kindergarten. This is what I'm going to call an average sample, and the reason I'm going to call it average is there's our new paradigm shift. Low is over here, the far left, average is in the middle, high is on the end. And this actually was a pull-out class with 5 pre-identified kids, some of which make up this low group. Now, I've taught all the grades, but I've taught kinder long enough to know that is not at all a typical high, medium, and low. As a matter of fact, that low is high in kinder. That high is ridiculous in kinder. That could even be average for 4th if you really think about it. So I know this looks totally wrong, and I actually have an entire suitcase of hundreds of writing samples from everybody in the class from 3 different classes, because I like to actually immerse you guys in writing so you can see this actual bell curve in its form of 4 or 5 on this end, this 10 or 11 in the middle, and then the 5 or 6 on this side, and see that across each group, because I like it to be in your hands. But for right now, what I'll say is this is just the group of swimmers swimming in the pool where the current's pushing behind them. So everybody goes up. When the current's pushing behind you, your weak swimmers propel forward, even if they're just dead man floating. Your strong swimmers look bionic, and everybody in between just thrives as well. So you lift everybody up when you're going in that same direction, which is teaching with the brain in mind. So let's look at quickly your average. This is average sample, and you'll see telltale signs that something's up, something's weird. I am a dolphin. I live in the deep blue sea. There are octopus, there are sharks, but I could kill them with my nose. I can camouflage, so when sharks swim by me, they cannot see me. There are coral, too. I could play all day. There's no place like home. Notice the way the little guy spelled the word they, T-H-A-Y. Now, most kids, oh, and by the way, the word see, S-Y. Now, we know why he did that based on what I had just taught you about the sneaky Y. But most kids that are going to take a leap to write the word camouflage know how to spell the word see in kindergarten. Because in kindergarten, usually your only kids who are writing anything are kids who've been read to at home. That's how else, they don't have any skills yet, so how else would they put things together from whole cloth? Your writers in kinder are kids who've had parents read to them. They remember some of the words, and then they come to school and they can put some of those words down. Those are your writers. The rest of the kids just copy name tags and color words and make a B 14 times, and it doesn't make any sense at all, but they're engaged in writing, or driding, however you call it. But it's interesting because typically if a kindergartner is going to sit there and try to put together the word camouflage, they're already going to know how to spell the word see. And to me, it's ironic to see these errors in words that are simple and yet such power over words that are harder, such courage to jump into these words and say what he really wants to say. So I know he spelled they, T-H-A-Y, because he knew it was E-Y or A-Y, but at his age, without text experience, it was a crapshoot. He didn't know which one was which, so he just picked one. And he picked the wrong one. With more experience, that will fine-tune which one's correct. But the good part is, he picked one that makes sense, which means when he reads it, he can reread what he writes and move on with his story. And that's what keeps a writer writing. Nothing stops a writer writing faster than having no idea what they just wrote down. And writing makes you a better reader. Reading makes you a better writer. It's all really the same thing. If you're a Morse code operator, sending the code makes you a much better receiver. Receiving messages makes you a much stronger sender. It's the same thing backwards. So we want to keep kids engaged in writing. We want kids to keep reading that book that they really like without having to stop at every 3rd word because they don't know that pattern yet and that sound yet. The more we can give them a motivation to engage in the books they're actually interested in reading or the stories they actually want to tell, the better and the stronger a reader-writer they are. So I love the things he did. I know why he put S-Y too. He was thinking E-R-I at the end of the word. It's got to be sneaky Y. So he stuck a Y there. But again, he can reread what he wrote, he can move on with his story, and that's going to keep him writing. So that's the key. And you can tell he's building from whole cloth. He's literally building this from what he owns as a tool set. And that's a cool thing. Now, this is a low-level guy. This was one of the guys who had a sticker on his cume. And this group of kids, and I'm going to kind of move myself through here. This was a group of kids who had pre-identified child find. They were coming from either didn't talk until they were 4 or alcohol fetal syndrome, something that caused them to be identified and already starting to get services before kinder. Not speech artic, half your class can't talk right in kinder, but heavy duty stuff. So this was one of those guys. He wrote, I had dolphin, other dolphins make me dead fish. I don't like it, it tastes horrible. I swim round the deep blue sea. Now I love that he took a leap to write the word horrible, but he didn't know how to spell the word blue. He took a great guess with blue. He spelled it B-L-O-O. Blue. Ooh. But what's interesting is his head was 3 inches from the blue crayon on the wall. There's a big blue crayon on the wall. All he had to do is glance to the right, and it's right there for him to copy. You know why he didn't do it? And this is the cool thing about what writing lets you do, is that you can see it like an X-ray into their head as a reader when you look at their writing. He didn't copy that word blue because he was on a roll. He was telling his story. He didn't need that stupid sight word. Kids like this typically live and die by your sight words. Heck, they come up with their whole story based on, okay, what can I write about the farm using the words boy, girl, like, it, and she? I mean, your sight words often are their only ammunition to bring to the table because they can't build from whole cloth because they don't have the skills they need to put things together and take them apart. So I loved that he was so into what he was doing that he picked what is a perfectly good guess, that O-O. If I were right there with him, I would have said, I love the way you got that ooh sound. That's awesome. Now the grown-up one that we use for that word is UE. See, it's up here. So I wouldn't have said it was wrong. I would have just said, great job for knowing that. The grown-up one for that word that we use is this one. But in his own time, when I'm not there, I love that he put this together. I also love that he wrote the word horrible because bad would have been a lot faster. But he didn't want to say bad by darn it. He wanted to say it was horrible. And that's going to keep him writing because he can say what he wants. I loved that. Now, and he picked roud, by the way, R-O-U-D. Keep noting that because when we go to the next low guy, okay, here it was. He wrote, I had a fun swim. I jump high, H-I-Y. He apparently couldn't decide. He knew sight memory. He'd seen high, H-I, but he knew sneaky wise as ear-eye, so he thought, to be safe, I'm going to put both. That way I know I got it right. So he spelled high, H-I-Y. And it's fun, too. I had a great time swimming, and now I'm tired. Now, he spelled now, N-O-U, because he didn't know which one was which. He just crapshoot picked the O-U instead of the O-W, which is fine. He can go back, reread it, and keep writing if he wants. It also tells me as a reader, by the way, how many words could he crack apart. And I especially like the way he spelled great, G-R-A-T-E, because it's wrong and yet so right. And by so right, I mean, think how many words he could read. If he gets that that's what makes that A say A, then he could read about 400 other words. The interesting part, though, is if he spelled the word, and actually I meant to make this point on the kid that wrote they, T-H-A-Y. If he spelled the word they correctly, I wouldn't know if he could actually crack apart about 1,000 other words that had the E-Y-A-Y sound, or if he just knew the word they. The fact that he spelled that so wrong and yet so right means he owns the tool. He knows E-Y-A-Y say A. That's about 100 words or 2,000 words that he's got the key to. And that's so much more interesting to me than if he spelled it correctly. Now, I'm not saying I don't want him to spell it correctly. I'm saying your diagnostic scope is more limited if it's a sight word because you don't know whether they just plugged in the sight word or they actually own the tools that went into building it. Stanford actually just did a study that really talked about this whole thing, and it's on my Facebook page, and I think I mentioned it in a blog as well, and I'm going to do another post about it. But it talked about, sight words don't get you anywhere near the bang for the buck as actual reading and writing, and don't memorize what you can just read. Now, the trick is, if you can't read everything because you don't own the whole code till 2nd or 3rd grade, then sight words are your lifeline. But if they could have access to everything earlier on, the memorization can kind of just dissipate because they can actually work through things by building it, reading it, writing it. Now, here's the interesting part with great. This is not a kid who can think out of the box yet about, he's not going to put a letter for a sound he doesn't hear. So that E did not come because he was thinking, I need an E that will be silent to impact the alternative sound of the vowel in close proximity to make it go from short to long. That's not how he thinks. He put an E there for one reason. That's Mommy E. And Mommy E will stand one letter away from another vowel, and if she's one letter away, she will tell that vowel, you say your name. And he will. Because she's close enough if she needs to get a hold of him, reach over that one head and tell him to do it. Now, if Mommy's not there, that vowel gets to be short and lazy, and that word would have been gr-at. He wanted that word to be gr-ate, so he had to stick a Mommy E right there, close enough to get a hold of that A if need be. Now, that's like thinking about, like if you're playing soldiers or Barbies, the sergeant soldier tells the private soldier what to do, and the private's not going to do it till he's told. Mommy Barbie tells the baby Barbie what to do. That's the kind of thinking that happens back here. And yet he can apply that kind of thinking to navigate his decision making with unfamiliar text. It's a perfect storm because we're taking what already drives their decision making on a daily basis and we're using it to give them a leg up on text they've never even seen before.